Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine. My name is Vic Shy, and this is the Scare Score, where I break down horror movies and rate them on how scary I think they are. In this episode, I'll be going over the 2023 Thai horror film, Death Whisperer. I'll be going over the events that take place throughout the film while breaking down each scare scene and rating them on how scary they are or attempt to be. If you enjoy watching me break down horror movies, I would really appreciate you clicking the like button and letting me know that. We are only 1,000 subscribers away from reaching the unreal goal of 100,000 subscribers on the channel. It feels completely surreal, and your support truly means the world to me. Death Whisperer is based on a ghost story that was originally posted on the Thai discussion forum website pantip.com. It is supposedly based on true events that happened to the author's mother. But how scary is it? Sit back and relax and join me as we explore Death Whisperer and tally up the scare score. Our movie begins with a disclaimer that all characters and incidents are fictional and not meant to be offensive or viewed by anyone. A horror movie that starts with a disclaimer usually means it's heading in a pretty wild direction. In this movie's case, I guess it's kinda true. The film takes place in 1972 in the town of Kanchanaburi, Thailand. A mother and father talk about taking care of their sick daughter and finding a cure. We soon realize that her illness is a little more serious than just a common cold and a lot more lethal. The film's intro doesn't hold any punches and hits us with a gory scene almost immediately. The scariness here comes from the sheer brutality that seemingly came out of nowhere. It's a really effective way to start off the film that has plenty more where that came from. The film treats us to some beautiful cinematography showing the Thailand countryside. We then meet half of the family, the mom, Yad, Yam, and Yi. Just wait till we get to the brothers. The sisters walk to school and come across a large eerie tree with a shrine in front of it. They seem terrified of it, but unless they just took an alternate route to school, it can't have been the first time they've seen it. It's the last day of school, and Yad stays after school to clean up the classroom. While wiping down the chalkboard, she hears a noise behind her and the music intensifies. It turns out to be her sister Yam looking at some creepy drawings left in a desk that belonged to the girl from the intro named Nat. On their way home, they pass by the same tree and see a ghostly woman under it. They take off running straight into a fake-out jump scare courtesy of their brother Yod. 10 minutes in, and a glaring issue already revealed itself in several scenes. The film relies heavily on jump scares and overly dramatic music to try and be scary. The woman was creepy, but I feel like the scene tried way too hard to prove that. They literally show the woman menacingly standing in the same spot 5 times within 10 seconds, and they top it off with a fake-out jump scare, so I'll take that point back, please. They return home late, and we are introduced to their angry dad and older brother Yod. Their dad is super strict and seems to care more about his farm than anything else. I'd rather have a strict dad than They go to a local fair so we can see them have fun together as a family before things start to go south. They have a sweet moment on a Ferris wheel together that does feel a little forced. The sweetness is short-lived, however, thanks to a genuinely creepy moment of a crazed-looking woman staring and pointing at them from below. This scare scene uses the element of surprise pretty effectively. It's a nice introduction to the crazed woman that isn't shoved down our throats like the previous scene. Yam gets off the Ferris wheel coughing and gets chastised by her dad for being sick. How dare you have such a weak immune system? They take her to the doctor and we are introduced to their eldest sibling, Yak. Pop spent more time on his farm than he put thought into naming his kids. As a welcome home gift, his dad puts him straight to work because it's cheaper to use your own kids for labor and title it family business. The family dinner gets a little intense and it's obvious that Yacht and their dad didn't appreciate Yak joining the military. Yam goes to bed early because of a headache and her dad rips on her some more for being weak. We get some very quick flashes of disturbing imagery that show the horrors to come. That night, the window above Yam opens on its own, which leads to a predictable but effective jump scare. Jump scares are infamous for being cheap scares, but if used sparingly and well-timed can sometimes be effective. This one was pretty predictable, but the setup was done well and had lots of tension. The best part of the scare was the disturbing sight of the ghost next to her, which happens to be Nat. Yad wakes up and sees Yam leaving the room. She sees her in the kitchen eating something as the radio suddenly turns on. Yam then appears directly behind her and is clearly possessed. We then hear a woman creepily chanting the words T-Yod, which puts Yad straight to sleep, kind of like if Jigglypuff said it. The chanting sounds super creepy, and if I heard that, I would have wet the bed before my head hit the pillow. The next day, one of the farm workers named Mun quits unexpectedly without giving a reason why. He ominously tells Yak to keep an eye on his family. The possessed Yam goes off on Yad and Yi and lies about what happened when their mom comes in the room. Yi then reveals that the previous night, she woke up and saw Yam creepily staring at her. She even draws her scary expression in the dirt. Hearing Yi describe the incident was oddly more effective than if they just showed what happened. The mom realizes that there's something clearly wrong with Yam, but chalks it up to her being sick. The parents go out for the night, which is an obvious sign that things are going to go wrong. The older siblings have a meeting about the odd things happening, and Yad tells them about the eerie whisper she heard the previous night. Her brothers didn't hear the voice, but Yak reveals that Mun did, which is why he suddenly quit. Mun said it's back, but didn't give any more details on what it is. Yam once again walks off in the middle of the night as the creepy voice and whisper can be heard. Yad bites down on her own hand to induce pain and keep herself awake. She tells Yi to hide in the closet while she goes to look for Yam. Her brothers are already outside looking for her as the ghostly woman from earlier suddenly appears. The spirit is the Death Whisperer and has been putting everyone to sleep with her voice. Yak puts his military training to use and shoots at the ghost on sight, who immediately disappears. They bring Yam back inside and she doesn't remember anything that just took place. We then get a shot of the clock showing 2 AM with a loud dramatic sound effect to go along with it. The older siblings regroup to talk about the craziness that just took place, and we see the events through Yak's perspective. The brothers stayed up drinking and 2 of them passed out while Yak kept watch on the farm. The door slowly opens behind him and he sees Yam walking out on her own. We hear the mysterious creepy voice trying to put him to sleep, but he fights through it and puts his hand over a flame to stay awake. He wakes up the other 2 and they go searching for Yam. They see the ghostly woman and get lured into the woods. They see Yam briefly standing there before she turns around and passes out. The ghostly woman is now creepily stalking them, and Yak applies the shoot now, ask later philosophy. The music intensifies as the woman appears and reappears several times with the same creepy smiley face. We're reminded that bullets are not very effective against ghosts and brought back to the present time. This scare scene started out creepy, but then lost it pretty quickly. It just sort of became a loud and jumbled scene that played the card of creepy disappearing ghosts too many times. There's only so many times you can show the ghost making the same creepy smiling face before it starts to become a little silly. Yad realizes her brother saw the same woman that she and her sister saw under the tree, but let's add an unnecessary jump scare before she can finish that thought. The next day, Yak says that this is the exact same thing that happened to Nat before she died. Yak vows to find a cure and wants to keep what happened from their parents. He apologizes to Yacht for leaving, and it's clear that everyone depends on him to look after the family. It's a nice little moment between the siblings. We also get a nice moment between Yad and Yam before getting another predictable jump scare. Yam is brutally attacked by the crazed woman from the fair, who shoves her entire hand down her mouth. Yad and Mom are in the kitchen but don't hear Yam being assaulted in the next room. The woman pulls out one of her teeth and puts it in her mouth. They finally hear what's happening and the mom kicks the old woman out of the house. The crazed woman laughs on her way out and Yad looks on in fear at the absolutely chaotic moment. This was a good scare scene that took place in broad daylight. The attack on Yam was unexpected and pretty brutal. The crazed old woman is totally over the top but still manages to be scary and unnerving. Yak comes home with a man named Sergeant Papan who's come to assess the situation. Yam's possession has gotten worse and she spits into Sarge's face. Sarge reveals that she may be possessed by the crazed woman named Chue. The woman recently moved into town and supposedly practices black magic. Did I say supposedly? I meant undoubtedly, as we see see her performing a dark ritual and completely violating a bull in a brief but disgusting moment. Yak and Sarge bust into the hut, but not before she drops Yam's tooth into the bowl, successfully completing her nasty ritual. She then takes herself out of the equation by running her noggin straight through a bamboo stick. This scene is the definition of over the top, and the Evil Dead influence is pretty clear. It's also clear that this film isn't taking itself too seriously and is just meant to be fun, which it is. Sarge explains that Chue was possessed by a malevolent spirit that looks for prey at night. Chue was its host during the day, where the spirit goes to rest. However, with Chue now dead, the spirit has chosen a new host, Yam. The spirit needed a tooth to fully possess its new host, and they didn't get there in time to stop the ritual. It seems that the Death Whisperer's only motive is to be as evil as possible and cause chaos. That night, they decide to keep a close watch on Yam, who has been experiencing pain in her stomach. We get another dramatic transition to the clock showing 2 AM, which is around the same time the spirit strikes every night. A heavy fog appears as the spirit's whispering can be heard. Yak tries to keep his brothers awake, but they fall asleep. To keep herself awake, Yad bites down on her hand really hard. Yam leaves her room and is creepily whispering to try and get Yak to sleep. He succumbs to her whispers and passes out. Yad slaps him awake and they wake up the other two. The whole family goes outside and Yak tries telling his dad what's going on. The dad doesn't believe him and smacks him for talking out of terms. Rocks start falling from above, which makes the dad realize something weird is happening. Yak takes charge and splits everyone up to go look for Yam, which is always a terrible horror movie idea. Yak gets lured into the grain fields by Yam calling out his name.
ไอ้เหี้ยยักษ์
A ghostly hand suddenly grabs him solely to have another jump scare. Something quickly approaches him and his shoot now ask later philosophy backfires as he blasts his mom right in the neck. Thankfully, it turns out to be the spirit playing tricks on him using his mom's image. She starts chasing after him looking like the R-rated version of Nearly Headless Nick. He runs out of the fields and does a tactical roll as if he just heard an acorn hitting the roof of his car. His real mother appears behind him and he shoots in her direction, but Yod slaps the gun away just in time. Back at the house, Yam knocks on the bedroom door asking Yad to open it. It's clearly not the real her, which becomes evident when she sees her brothers holding the real Yam. Yi almost opens the door, but Yad stops her just in time. The spirit sticks its hand through a gap, tearing its skin in the process, Gerald's Game style. They reunite with their mom and the family survives the night. This was a really fun scare scene with several good moments. Yak's nearly headless mom chasing him was really well done, but was more actiony than scary. The bloody hand squeezing through the gap was a nice display of gore that was really suspenseful. Not an overly scary scene, but a really fun one. The next day, Sergeant Papan returns with powerful reinforcements, another old man named Mr. Put. He takes a look around the farm and pays special attention to their dad's giant bamboo grove that he refuses to sell. Yak gets a little impatient and grabs the old man, who tells him he must learn to control his anger. He confronts the possessed Yam, who tries manipulating her mom into helping her. She leaves him no choice but to unleash the forbidden thumb on forehead while I blow on your face jutsu. She successfully manages to manipulate her mom into protecting her. The dad grabs a stick in anger and tries disciplining the possession out of her. The mom protects her and Mr. Put tells everyone to leave the room. He says the spirit is weak during the day and busts out one of the most cliche wise old man trying to help quotes, "Time is of the essence." He tells the boys to cut down the bamboo grove and they reluctantly do so. The dad shows up and asks who gave them permission to cut his prized bamboo, to which Mr. Put replies, "I did. This is my farm now, bitch." They chop it all down and reveal a stack of blood and human organs that look totally gross. He orders them to burn it down and Yam shows up to try and stop them. It takes the entire family to hold her down and she tells Mr. Put that he will pay for this. They burn it down and you would think that it would weaken the spirit's grasp on Yam, but it really doesn't. They drive Yam to the doctor, which sets the stage for the spirit's final offensive. Mr. Put says that the spirit has been around for centuries and chose Yam because she overcame death by surviving malaria as an infant. He gives Yak a revolver with sacred bullets and says it won't be easy getting to the hospital. Everyone in the car suddenly disappears, but only from Yak's perspective. The family must pass their final test to reach the hospital by facing an endless wave of horror movie cliches. Yad sees several spirits along the road, one of them being Nat. The other spirits are possibly past victims of the Death Whisperer. Several spirits appear in front of the truck creepily smiling, but Yak just rams right through them. Pink goo falls on Yad's face and that spirit appears directly on top of her. Sarge tells them to close their eyes using the logic of if we don't see them, they won't see us. The final roadblock is Yak's entire family standing in the middle of the road. Thankfully, his mind is strong and he shoots the sacred bullets at them before driving right through. This makes all the spirits around them disappear and everyone in the car reappear. Possessed Yam starts whispering and tries putting him to sleep. Mr. Put goes to perform his forbidden jutsu, but Yam bites his finger off. She grabs a hold of the steering wheel and causes the truck to crash straight into a tree. This was a very fast-paced scene that didn't offer a ton of scares. The scare factor of this scene can be described as trying to drive through as many horror movie cliches as fast as possible, which is literally what happened. The spirit comes through with her promise of revenge on Mr. Put as a large branch is now located between his non-existent head. Yam drags everyone onto the road as Yak looks for the sacred gun. It turns out Yam has the gun and she performs a functions check on Sergeant Papan. Yak gets the better of her and jams Mr. Put's cane through her arm. This makes Yam's body an imperfect host and she throws up the spirit. The Death Whisperer reveals her true form and Yak quickly vanquishes her using the sacred bullets. The entire climax of this movie felt very rushed. The film has a 2-hour runtime, so I don't know why they tried to speedrun the third act. It just made everything feel unimportant and lowered the stakes by a lot. Yam is taken to the hospital and everything seems to have gotten back to normal. The happy ending doesn't last very long as we learn that Yam is still possessed by the spirit who hasn't been destroyed. But if you've ever seen even a single horror movie, then you probably already knew that. Yam pulls out a tooth and dies in the same brutal way that Nat did. Yad looks out of the window and briefly sees the Death Whisperer standing in the field, showing that it's gonna take a lot more than special ammunition to bring her down. We all knew this was coming. There's absolutely no way you build up a villain like that and have her taken out by a couple of bullets. Even though it was predictable, seeing what happened to Yam was still heartbreaking and brutal. It's an over-the-top death that packs a punch and is scary because of how brutal it is. Seeing the Death Whisperer in the field just out of focus after the fact is oddly her scariest appearance, proving that you don't need multiple shots and dramatic sound effects to be truly scary. Yam is cremated and the look on her eldest brother's face means he's out for revenge. In the film's final scene, he approaches the Death Whisperer's tree axe in hand, and with sleeves rolled up and lean muscles on full display, he destroys the wooden shrine in front of the tree. He torches it, and as he watches it go up in flames, he declares that this is not the end. The Death Whisperer can eerily be seen in his eye's reflection as the movie ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Death Whisperer. My friends, this was a pretty fun watch that I had no idea what to expect of going in. I didn't see any trailers for the film and decided to go in blind, which I think is always the best way to see a film. The disclaimer in the beginning and the intro had me thinking this was going to be a more serious film than it was. The film didn't take itself too seriously and had some pretty clear Evil Dead influence. I can appreciate a self-aware film, but it still had way too many horror movie tropes and cliches. I knew this was going to be an issue from the very beginning, and it unfortunately lasted throughout the entire film. Aside from that, there are still plenty of very cool moments of horror throughout that make this a very fun experience, earning Death Whisperer a mid-scare score of 49%. The film has a very basic story but totally runs with it, and I definitely recommend it for those looking for a good watch. There is already a sequel set to release in October of this year, and I look forward to seeing where this story goes. The scariest scene in the film is Yam's death at the hospital. Although I knew that the Death Whisperer wasn't gone, I didn't really expect her to die in such a brutal way. There were other brutal deaths in the film, but those felt a lot less serious than this one. Seeing the Death Whisperer briefly standing there after doing her dirty work made her seem scarier and much more sinister than she was the entire film. But as always, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the Horror Mine. Y'all stick around.